All right, everyone, welcome. This is Module 5. We're 2 modules away from approaching the midterm, which is going to be really exciting because that means that y'all have actually survived so far. The amount of information, yes, it is a lot of information. It's a lot of information learning a new operating system in a small amount of time. But you know what? We're going to get through this. I'm going to guide you through it. I'll give you all the practice you need, and then we'll go ahead and go from there. All right, so in this module, we're going to talk about storage, and particularly when it refers to local storage. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So when you've installed an operating system for like Windows or maybe Mac OS, you've installed an operating system, there's actually a part of it that we have to go ahead and kind of get an idea of. And when we actually go ahead and install the operating system, we have to break up the hard drive. When we break up, and what we do is we break them into parts. So the term we use for this is called partitioning, or break it into partitions. All right. Let me go ahead and move this over, increase this font size. There we go. All right, partitions. So partitions, by definition, they basically is the separation or separating an HD, a hard drive, into smaller components. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means a couple of things. In actuality, when we talk about this, this can be like, you can treat this as, let's see, you can treat them as separate storage devices, such as having, multiple different drives. Let's say devices. But you can also go ahead and you can partition your own FS. We need to go ahead and look at that too, so we can kind of see how it is on its own. Now, the way we did this in the olden days is the old tool we used. The old tool, it was called MBR, which actually was an acronym for something called the Master Boot Record. And that's what we do. That's what we did things back in the day. A lot of the newer tools, though, a lot of the new operating systems are actually using a partitioning tool called GPT, and this stands for the GUID partition tool. So a lot of the newer operating systems, more modern ones, are using GPT. And the first thing is like, well, why is it that why do we move away from using MBR? Why not just continue using MBR? Well, GPT actually adds a little bit of extra to that. We don't have to worry about limitations. The same limitations that came with MBR. And then not only that, but the layout of MBR, and don't have to worry about the layout compared to MBR. And these are very key points. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in Module 2, a little more in detail. But this is just to give you a little bit of an understanding of this. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So we're talking about, so there's 2 different parts we have to go ahead and understand. Within the, so there's actually a physical file system, and that's going to be what that stands for, FS, file system, okay? So within the physical file system, there's also another component called the virtual file system. Now, how do these actually relate to each other? Well, this is how it works. The way that the physical file system is this is the structure that organizes the data on a device. So when we have data on a device, this is actually the structure that it's organized in. However, the virtual file system, this is the hierarchical structure that we, the users, see when we browse the directory tree. So let's think about that for a second. So if I asked you a physical FS versus a virtual FS, how does this work? Well, the physical is the actual way it's structured on the data on the device itself. And then the virtual FS is the hierarchical structures that users see when we browse. Let me rephrase that, write that. It's browse the directory tree. All right. So how does this look in this case? So if I'm on my window, let's go ahead and look at this. So this right here, that's actually going to back out. So root right here, this root, this would be considered the physical file structure, okay? Everything's under root. And the way we do this is that we actually go ahead and have a way to, how do these actually, how do they talk to each other or work with each other? Well, we have something called a mount point. And these mount points are what give us the ability to basically go ahead and meet or blend the physical with the virtual FS. And that's through a mount point. So the mount point for this one is the root directory. That's the mount point. That's the physical mount point. Within the physical, there's this virtual system of these different directories that we can browse into. That's what we use to browse into. Okay, so that kind of makes sense a little bit. So as I said before, these right here, this is the physical file system, but this is not the only physical file system. Any one of these can be a physical file system. You can make them physical, and we'll talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. But what we want to talk about, like any of these, this is actually the physical, and then this right here that's displayed is going to be the virtual. So when we talk about mounting, mounting doesn't just have to be like, think about it this way. If I plug in a USB on a Windows box, right? Let me go ahead and actually I have a USB right here. Let me plug in a USB into my Windows box. All right. There you go. This is that USB drive has been mounted, okay? It's the D drive. This is the virtual system that I get to work with, okay? Notice that this was done automatically. As soon as I plugged it in, it's got this is known as universal plug and play, right? You plug something in, it automatically recognizes it. You don't have to do this manually. But mounting can be done manually if you need to. I'm going to do this very, very bad, and I'm just going to pull it out. Don't go ahead and judge me. But mounting can be done both manually or automatically. Or automatic. We're just going to leave it that, or automatic. So we can do this two different ways. We can do this in the automatic format, or we can do this actually in the manual format. So for automatic mounting, let me move this over. If you want to automatically, auto mount it. If I want to automatically mount something to auto mount or auto mounting, I can't spell today, I apologize. This is going to be handled by a file called the /etc/fs tab. So I don't know exactly what the tab means, but I'm going to give you what my rendition is. The fs tab is basically the file system table, okay? And that's exactly what it is. It is a system that holds a bunch of file tables, and we will go into this a little bit more in module 5.3. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but this is what we're going to use to actually handle auto mounting. Is going to be the fs tab file that's found in the Etsy directory, and you can kind of see it right here. We can do a cat/etsy/fs tab just to give you an idea. This is what it looks like. This looks like a bunch of gobbledygook right now. I'll explain more in 5.3. okay? So once you go ahead and know that that's happening, well, then this is another big question. The big question now becomes, why are there so many partitions and file systems? Like, what's the point? Like, why do we have so many of them? Like, why couldn't we just be happy with just the few that we had, right? Well, first of all, it's flexibility slash options. It gives us either flexibility or options. Some of them can only support certain things versus another one. Some of them actually go ahead and are better able to handle this kind of data versus the other one. So it just depends on what we need it for. We also need to understand that there's different types of data. And these need different file systems or file types. So if you don't have the correct file system type for the type of data you're actually running, it can actually mean that your data is going to be the I/O output is going to go ahead and be the reading of the I/Os is going to be very slow, or maybe it'll be very efficient. You don't know. It's going to be up to you. We also need to know that depending on what we need, we may need to set up disk quotas, and not every file system or partition support disk quotas. Now, disk quotas we'll talk about a little bit more in 5.4, but just know that we need to set up a disk quota. The other thing that we need to look at too, is we need to look at how we back up. So we look at how we back up data. And that actually can be very, very important too when we talk about file systems. Maybe we don't need backup this as often as another type of file system. So, and then the other thing is too is we also prevent a single user scroll down just a little bit from filling up the storage device. And this is very important. This actually kind of goes hand in hand with the disk quotas. So this is just an introduction to the essentials you're going to need to know for local storage. In the next video, I'm going to go a little bit deep dive into the MBRs and GPTs. And then in the next module, 5.3, I'm going to talk all about mounting and how we can work with this Etsy FS tab file. And then lastly, I'm going to go into some more advanced features in the last video for this section. All right. That's all I have for this one. If you have any questions, please email me. If not, I'll see you on the next video.